What did he do when he escaped?
Hold on, let me think about this.
Keith, go ahead.
No. He ran out the front door.
No. Heath, go ahead. What did he do?
He unplugged the TV.
Right. And then what did the AJ's family discover? What did they learn?
They thought that that the TV was broken.
Right. But then they did. But then what did they end up doing? I hope they're fun.
I forgot.
You forgot?
I only remember a bit.
It's something that you did yesterday with your family.
Nope. I can't remember. I'll never be able to remember.
They ended up talking to each other, right?
Yeah.
Dad told stories and they played games. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. And then let me read you the last bit of that. They talked and talked, and Dad got out some cards and they played a game of Crazy Eights and another one called Pig, where they all put their fingers in their noses and laughed like hyenas. When Bo fussed, they took turns jiggling him on their knees. After a while, Mrs. Thomas gasped, "Goodness sakes, it's an hour's past your bedtime." The children groaned and asked if they could play cards tomorrow. In a few minutes, all the Thomases had gone to bed, and it was quiet, quiet, quiet for the first time since I'd arrived. So now we're on the next chapter. Peace breaks out. Peace breaks out. Early in the morning, Ty, Dealey, and AJ raced downstairs and played Crazy Eights. Later, they ran outside and threw a football around the yard. The Thomases were having breakfast when the phone rang. Mr. Thomas talked for a few minutes, saying, "Uh-oh, that's fine." When he hung up, he told Mrs. Thomas, "We're going to have a visitor, but don't tell Anthony James." Oh, a mystery. I like mysteries because they're fun to solve. Then again, I don't like mysteries because I don't like not knowing what's going on. So I waited and I waited. A few hours later, the doorbell rang. Who can predict who's at the door? What's your prediction? Riley, go ahead. Who do you think's at the door? Riley,
Garth.
Do you think Garth? Do you think so, Heath? Do you think it's Garth? Who do you think, Heath?
I think it's Miss Mac.
Oh.
I agree with Riley.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see what the prediction.
I agree with Riley.
The visitor turned out to be, drumroll please, Garth Tugwell. It was Garth. And his father. Really appreciate this, Mr. Tugwell told the Thomases. It was Mrs. Brisbane's idea. Since Garth can't have Humphrey at our house right now, she suggested that she could help AJ take care of him over here. Sounds like Mrs. Brisbane, as if I'm trouble to take care of. But Garth had been crying because he couldn't have me. So maybe she was trying to be nice. After Mr. Tugwell left, Mr. Thomas called AJ in. AJ ran into the room and practically backed out when he saw Garth. "We have a guest," said Mr. Thomas. "Shake hands, Anthony. Garth is here to help you take care of Humphrey." If you're Humphrey, are you going to be a little nervous? A little bit?
I'm going to be so nervous that was Humphrey.
I know, Sophie. Okay, so
Child. If I was Humphrey, I would go close to wondering who it was, and then I would just step back. It was Garth.
I know that's what happened.
I would just run away.
Well, let's see
Oh.
what happens.
If I was Humphrey, I would just be carried by someone else in my cage.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if that would work, Adeline. Let's see what happens. AJ and Garth reluctantly shook hands. How come? Asked AJ. Garth shrugged his shoulders. Mrs. Brisbane said to. Well, come on, we'll clean his cage and get it over with, AJ said. That's not very nice. Not filling up Garth's bucket, is he? The boys didn't talk much while they cleaned the cage, but they started giggling when they cleaned up the potty corner. I don't know why that makes everybody giggle. After they stopped giggling, they started talking and kidding around. They decided to
You just giggle, Miss Childs.
I know. It's poop. It's poop. It makes everybody giggle. After they stopped giggling, they started talking and kidding around. They decided to let me out of the cage. So they took a set of old blocks from Dealey's room and built me a huge maze. I love mazes. When we were all tired of that game, AJ offered to teach Garth to play Crazy Eights, and then Ty and Dealey joined them for a game of Go Fish. Nobody mentioned the TV. Nobody shot any rubber bands. Later in the afternoon, the kids were all outside playing football. I was fast asleep until Mrs. Thomas came into the den with a broom and started sweeping. A minute later, Mr. Thomas entered. What are you doing, honey? What does it look like? I'm sweeping. You know, all the snacking we do in here makes a real mess on the floor, she said. Is Bo asleep? Her husband asked. Uh-huh. Mr. Thomas walked over to his wife and took the broom away from her. Then sit down and take a rest, and I'll sweep. Go on, don't argue. Mrs. Thomas smiled and thanked him and sat down on the couch. Mr. Thomas swept all the outside of the room, even behind the TV. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Why is that uh-oh, you guys? Wait,
Because he might see that Humphrey shut it down.
right, he'll see that it's unplugged. Do you guys agree with Hannah?
Yeah.
Let's see. When he got there, he stopped sweeping and leaned down. Well, I'll be, he muttered. What's wrong? Said Mrs. Thomas. The TV is unplugged. It's unplugged. He came out from behind the TV, plug in hand, and with a very puzzled look on his face. But it couldn't have been just come unplugged while we were just sitting there watching. I mean, a plug doesn't just fall out, she said. Plug it in, see if it works, his wife said. Well, you guessed it, the TV came on as bright and loud as ever. I don't get it, Mr. Thomas muttered, but at least we don't have to pay to get it fixed. Mrs. Thomas stared at the screen for a few seconds. Then she glanced out the window at the kids playing happily outside. Charlie, what do you say we keep it unplugged for a couple of more days? She asked. We just won't tell the kids. Mr. Thomas grinned. Then he bent down and unplugged the TV. Couldn't hurt, he said. He put down the broom and sat on the couch near his wife, and the two of them just sat there in the den giggling. Well, like, stop giggling, Gail. Suddenly, Mr. Thomas looked over at me. You don't mind a little peace and quiet, do you, Humphrey? No, 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 I squeaked, and I promptly fell asleep. There were a lot better, things were a lot better when AJ, Garth, and I returned to room 26. No rubber bands flew through the air. Garth didn't trip anybody or make fun of anybody. That meant Gail didn't get in trouble for giggling. Oh, the lights always go off. Heidi, ho. Heidi didn't get in trouble for speaking out without raising her hand because she wasn't trying to tell Mrs. Brisbane what Bertha was doing. Is she a tattletale? Kind of. But the best change was Saya, who did raise her hand every single day. One day, she raised her hand to volunteer to stay during recess to clean the chalkboard. Miranda raised her hand too. Mrs. Brisbane chose both of them. Girls, I think I can trust you to stay here while I run this report to the principal's office, Mrs. Brisbane told them. Of course she could trust them. Once the girls were alone, they began to talk. I really liked your singing, Miranda told Saya. Thanks. My mom and I are going to the musical version of Cinderella over at the college this weekend, Miranda continued. We have an extra ticket. Would you like to come with us? My mom will pick you up. Saya quickly turned to face Miranda. Oh, yes, I have not been to that play before. Miranda grinned. Good, I'll have your mom call my mom. Suddenly, Saya's face fell. Oh, better not. She's so busy. Give me your number and I'll have my father call your mother. Saya watched Miranda's reaction carefully. So did I. Cool. That was it. Miranda jotted down her number. Saya was greatly relieved. You guys, why did Saya do that? Who can say? Why did Saya do that?
Her mom can't talk yet.
No, she can't. She's not very good at English yet. But her
But
dad,
they lived in a different country.
right. Good, Zara. But her dad's better at speaking English, isn't he? He is.
He's just a little shy.
Just a little shy, right. Okay. So that was it. Miranda jotted. Okay. I knew that Miranda's mother didn't care how well Saya's mother spoke English. Maybe now Saya would figure that out too, right? Miranda's mom is super nice. Another great thing that happened was Mrs. Brisbane started reading a book out loud in class, just like Mrs. Childs. It doesn't say that, does it? Do you think it says that in the book? Sometimes I doze right through these sessions, but this time she picked a really good book. When she announced that it was about a mouse, Gail giggled. What did she say? Art whispered to Richie. Pay attention, Art, Mrs. Brisbane said. It's about a mouse. Several of the boys groaned. Oh, baby stuff, one of them muttered. We'll see, Mrs. Brisbane told them. She started to read it. Oh, what a tale it was. All about a mouse no bigger than I am, who were all about mice no bigger than I am, who were great warriors. I was longing to put on some armor myself by the time she stopped reading. Continue tomorrow, she announced as she stuck the bookmark in place and closed the book. Tomorrow! That woman truly had a mean streak. She proved it again and again. I would have sneaked out of my cage at night to finish the book, but she's so mean that she stuck it in her desk drawer, the one that locks with a key. Urgh. That's what Heath always is like. You're torturing us when when I wouldn't finish a chapter, right, Heath?
Yeah, I'll just say a cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger, right. The weekend came. Oh, it's mean to leave you with a cliffhanger. That's what you would say. The weekend came in around quickly, though, and I went home with Richie. I'm still not quite sure how many people actually live in the Rinaldi's house, because there were always so many people coming and going. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, neighbors. One meal seemed to flow right into the next, and Richie's mom was very generous with treats. Now, Richie is Aldo's nephew. Aldo is his uncle, right? You guys remember that? And they have a big Italian family. I'll tell you one thing, you could never be lonely or hungry at the Rinaldi's house. On Sunday afternoon, guess who showed up? Remember Richie's uncle? I just said that. That's right, Aldo Amato. This time, my buddy Aldo was not lonely because he brought his girlfriend Maria to meet the family. She was a very nice lady who wore her long hair piled up high on her head. She was dressed in bright red from head to toe. Red earrings, red sweater, red skirt, red shoes. I think red is a very happy color. I think Maria is a very happy person, especially when she's with Aldo. All the Rinaldis made a big fuss over Maria and praised the bread and cookies she brought from the bakery where she worked. After all the commotion and the arrival died down, I heard Aldo tell Maria, "Now there's someone really important I want you to meet." And he introduced her to me. Believe it or not, Humphrey is one of my very best friends, he told her. And he was the very first friend I told you about. And he was the very first friend I told about you. Then I am honored to meet you, Humphrey, Maria said, smiling down at me. The pleasure is all mine, I squeaked. See, he likes you, said Aldo. And indeed I did. The world seemed like a pretty nice place for a handsome young hamster like me. I can tell you, I was sitting on top of the world when I returned to room 26 on Monday. But I just about toppled off when Mrs. Brisbane made an alarming announcement. Class, as you know, this will be a short week due to Thanksgiving, she said. And that means Humphrey will need a home for 4 days instead of 2. Who wants to volunteer? Do you think it's going to be like, what if it's Miranda? You won't
What if it's Saya?
You won't believe what I'm going to say, but no one held up their hand. No hand went up. I actually fell off my wheel. Mrs. Brisbane was surprised too. No one, she asked. Heidi, didn't you want Humphrey to go to your home? Oh, yes, but we're going to Grandma's house for Thanksgiving. Art, didn't you want Humphrey last week? Yes, but we're having relatives for Thanksgiving, and my mom said it wouldn't be a good time. And so it went on and on. Every single classmate had big plans for Thanksgiving, plans that didn't include having an extra hamster around. And I was, here it is, worried. And I was worried. I didn't want to spend 4 days alone in room 26. I worried all day Monday. I worried all day Tuesday. I worried all day Wednesday. At the end of the day, Principal Morales stopped by to give Mrs. Brisbane an envelope. I think it was her paycheck because she was especially glad to see him. I have a huge favor to ask, she said. Sure, Sue, what is it? Asked Principal Morales. He wore a tie with little turkeys all over it. Could you possibly take Humphrey for the weekend? I had my paws crossed that he'd say yes. But Principal Morales didn't even smile. Oh, Sue, I'd love to, but we're going out of town for the holiday. Another time, I'd love to. Another time wouldn't matter. I needed a place to go now. After that, what do you think's gonna happen? After that, Principal Morales left. Mrs. Brisbane sighed and began gathering papers. Then she turned to me. Well, Humphrey, it looks like you're going home with me for Thanksgiving.
I knew it. I was right about to say that.
I knew it.
She said grimly. She's not very happy about it. My fate was sealed. I was going to the home of the woman who once vowed to get rid of me for 4 whole days. And frankly, I was worried I'd never come back. Tip 12. If you must leave your hamster with a caretaker, make sure that it is something you know and trust. That's the end of that chapter.
No.
The next chapter is Thanks.
Why do you always leave us on cliffhangers?
I know.